Thank you for joining me for a walk in the garden. I'm Liz Davey, and you're watching this show on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable Television. And these episodes are filmed in my garden here in Norfolk, and we cover the gardening year in various garden beds, shady, sunny, herbs, vegetables, and we just go through the season and see what's blooming, what we can pick to eat, and how we can use it in the kitchen. The herbs are at their best right now. They haven't all gone to flower. They're fine to be picked right now. I have a variety of thymes, rosemary, sorrel in front of us. And this is the cilantro, which is going to seed. It has already flowered and formed little seeds. With cilantro, it's actually an annual in this climate, but it's a reseeding annual. And you can see the seeds on it. Now, when these seeds ripen and turn brown, you get 2 for 1 with cilantro because the seeds become coriander. And coriander is a spice, and so you can harvest both the leaves of the cilantro for your Chinese and Mexican dishes, and then you can also harvest the coriander, which is used as a spice with meats and in some of other breads and other things. So you really get 2 for 1 with coriander. And if you don't harvest the seeds and just let them drop, as I said, it's a reseeding annual, so next spring it will come up as cilantro right here in the garden. The one thing I do have to do besides keep the garden weeded, which is an ongoing task, though with the mulch it makes life a little easier, is to keep some of the things watered. The herbs are, some of them perennial. They will return each year. Some are annuals and some are reseeding annuals. Some of the annuals are the scented geraniums, at least in this climate. They'll die unless I take cuttings next month. But most of the annuals need a little extra water and an occasional dose of liquid fertilizer as well. Parsley is a biennial. I have some parsley down here. I have several different kinds of parsley. I have some down in front here as well. Parsley is a biennial, which means it puts up leaves the first year, and the second year it will come up in the garden and put up a bloom stalk, and then it dies. Basil in our climate is an annual, and that will be taken out at the end of the season. Thyme, of course, is a perennial. I have some annuals down here, some basil, another kind of basil. There's all different kinds that you can put in your herb garden. These are transplanted calendulas, and the blossoms of calendulas are edible. So we'll see if we can get some blossoms from those. But any of the annuals tend to take a little bit more water, as do some of the tender tropicals. Now this is lemon verbena, one of my favorite lemon herbs. And I'll put a little water on it more later. It's a more tropical plant. It probably is perennial if you get far enough south, maybe even into South America. But for us, it's an annual. Or you can pot it up and bring it inside and it will continue. You may be able to get it to live through at least part of the winter. And we'll be doing those things in August. Now let's move over to the perennial garden. I'm going to stop right here at the grapevine that I have on the trellis. And this year I have grapes. Surprise! Usually I have none or very, very few. This year there's quite a few forming on the stalks. I think it's because we've had extra rain. I'll try to keep this watered if we don't get sufficient rain in the future. But most years I don't have them. Of course, the birds are probably going to get to them before I do. But I'm very pleased to see that the vine is fruiting. And we'll look forward to seeing how they turn out and if we can keep the birds away. Here in the perennial garden, we're enjoying a lot of perennials right now. It really, things have really started to bloom. It's lily season, and this is a betony, which I like the foliage better than the flowers. It has a little pinkish flower stem on top, but I usually just cut them off down at the base of the ground and just let the little gray lamb ear type flowers predominate. Other things that will be cut off right now, the species lilies are blooming. When they're finished blooming, I will cut off the bloom heads. This one's not quite finished, but they're almost finished. And so I'll just cut those off. So again, its strength can go into its roots and its bulb, lily bulb. There are two kinds of lilies. The species lilies, well, actually there's more than two kinds, but for my purposes there are the earlier species lilies and then the oriental lilies that come a little later. And there's an oriental lily tucked in here that will be blooming in a little bit. So you can plant lilies and have them in bloom. I had Martagon lilies in bloom last month, just a few. This month we have these lilies, and the orientals will come a little bit later. If you plant it right, you can have a little lily in bloom almost all season. The Heliopsis is in bloom, and Delphinium. This Delphinium is a shorter variety of, if you get the tall, thin stakes, they tend to blow around a lot and really need to be individually staked, which is work I really didn't want to do. But these add that lovely touch of blue with the yellow flowers and don't need the extensive staking. Again, moving along, the Nectos scordum, or garlic, nectar garlic, has finished blooming, and once these stalks turn brown, I'll just take them off. They don't add anything to the garden, and I found that they don't dry well for arrangements either. The bees are still visiting the phlomis, and it looks like there may be a few more blooms down below. I'm going to cut off some of the brown ones, but they look like it might form a few blooms down below, so I'll cut them carefully so that I don't take off anything that might bloom later. Again, as things finish blooming, I do cut them back. It gives this plant some strength, and it also makes the garden look a little neater. I do not cut back foxgloves. Again, these tend not to be perennial, but they do reseed. Some of them are more perennial than others. All of them will reseed. I have some reseeding small plants. They tend to make foliage the first year and then flower the second year. So I'll leave them to go to seed. I have different types of alliums. These are the smallest ones. It's a drumstick allium. And they tend to be kind of tall and spiky and have just a small drumstick end in red. I have them throughout the garden here and there. If I don't deadhead these, take off that blooming piece before it goes to seed, I will have them all over the garden and they'll take over everything. So that's one, when you see in the catalog for bulbs, naturalizes freely, it means it spreads a lot. So you want to kind of watch out for those. If you really want them, get them, but make sure that you deadhead the blooms because otherwise they will seed all over the garden. Here's another one that can be cut, the penstemon. And again, I don't expect much more bloom from this one, but it does have a nice reddish foliage that will add to the garden. It's about time to cut back this oriental poppy. What I'll do is cut these, and instead of composting them, I will save a certain amount of them for winter arrangements. They look nice in fall and winter arrangements. I'll just let these dry in a cool, dry place, and then I can use them. It's perfectly normal for oriental poppy foliage to die back. This leaves a good place to put a potted plant or a chrysanthemum later on, once all of the foliage has died back. And again, I'll just cut these off to be reused later. I have butterfly bush, which is a type of milkweed relative. And you can see we just had a visiting butterfly to it. It's a butterfly magnet, and it's really great to have in your garden. I love it with the purple salvia. This is salvia purple rain. I think it looks really nice with the bright orange butterfly weed. Behind that I have another type of lily. That's a little more unusual one, a purple center with white edges. And we'll probably see a few more butterflies. And way in the back, I have some more alliums that are just starting to bloom. It's one called Summer Drummer, and according to the catalog, it was supposed to be a 6-inch ball of pink and white. It doesn't look like a 6-inch ball to me, but we will see. I don't think it's quite out yet. So we'll see in another couple weeks what it looks like. Roses. Roses have finished their first bloom cycle, and even though this is a knockout rose that will have repeated blooms through the summer, it's going to take a little rest about now. It had prolific blooms earlier, and to help with that second bloom cycle and subsequent ones, I'm going to use some rose fertilizer on it, and I need to put about a cup of it. More if the rose is larger. I'm going to just work this in under the drip line. And the drip line is where rain would drip off in case of rain. And so we can put it all the way out into this area. And I'll want to put some in back as well. That indicates that the roots are spreading out underneath, and we're actually feeding the roots. There's some more of these drumstick alliums, and I will dig this in with a fork. Just fork it into the dirt a little bit, and then be sure to water. Every time you fertilize something, it's important to add water. Roses need about 5 gallons per rose per week. So if you want to grow roses, you have to ensure that they get that amount of water per week. This is a 2-gallon watering can. So if I do this 2 to 3 times a week and let it soak in around the rose, that will be sufficient. It's best to water the area beneath the rose and not on top of the leaves, which can cause problems with fungus and leaf spots. Obviously, if it rains, well, you're going to get water on the leaves, but hopefully it dries off. If you do have to use overhead watering, it's best to water early in the morning, and that way the sun has time to dry the foliage before evening. I've put a few annuals in to take the place of bulbs. This is a celosa, and this is another one that can be dried, and it will get a little bit bigger than this. Continue as we go. Phlox is starting to bloom in back, and some veronica in blue, and more butterfly weed. And again, it also goes well with the yellow of the coreopsis. All of these are good pollinators. I have these alliums that are finished, and again, when they turn a little browner, I will cut them back and save them for use in floral arrangements later on. You really can save a number of things from the garden to add to an arrangement. Even if you buy the flowers, if you have a few things to add, it can kind of fill out the arrangement. Over here we have the self-seeded larkspur. I planted larkspur in my vegetable garden one year, and it decided to reseed over here. And it looks great with the daylilies that are in here. This is a pink daylily, and also with the light pink lilies over by the fence. It seeds itself kind of wherever it wants to, and I just let it grow. And it will reseed itself again this year, and we'll have more next year. Early in the spring, you can move it, and if you want it someplace else, you can add it to another area. Now let's go down to the vegetable garden and see what's growing there. It's just after the 4th of July, and I can always count on the raspberries to be around right after the 4th of July. I've put nets over them, or I would be sharing more with the birds, but I'm able to come out and pick 2 or 3, or maybe half a pint almost every day. I have 2 kinds of raspberries. This is the earliest one. The other ones are down further, the other end of the row. I'll move the net when these are finished down to that end and get those. I've been harvesting the peas, and it's time now to pull them. They have finished, and so we can pull them up, add them to the compost, and that will open up another row. I'll be taking down the fence. I still have a few green ones up at the other end. The snow peas, they may make a few more peas for me, but the shell peas are gone, and we've enjoyed them while they lasted. And these are the ones that we open the little pods and the peas are inside. But they have finished for the season. The snap peas, which are, you eat the pod and the peas, are pretty well gone. And the snow peas remain a little bit. I have lancenato kale, and I also have lots of cilantro in here and dill, and these are things that reseeded. So I talked about the cilantro earlier. Here's one that's in the process of going to seed. I'll let it seed around the garden a little bit, and then we'll have an early crop next year. That's what happens with the dill too. Dill tends to reseed, and some of the best dill is the reseeded dill, I think. I've taken all the garlic scapes off the garlic, and now it's putting its energy into making the garlic cloves down below. It's not ready to pick yet. Here's one that I left that's going to seed. You can see it looks a lot like the allium flowers. They're the same family, except we don't eat the roots of the ornamental ones, just the garlic and the onions. This one will go to seed, and the seeds will actually make more small garlic that in 2 or 3 years would then become the cloves. I tend to plant cloves from the prior year to get my garlic, and we plant it in the fall. These will be finished when 3 or 4 of the lower leaves are brown. You can see some are already starting. So middle to end of July, I'll dig one and see what the cloves look like. If you wait too long to pick it, the cloves start to separate. So we want to get it while the cloves are still tight in the garlic head, but we want them to have their maximum growth as well. Got flowers in here that are starting to bloom a bit. And I have a little space left over here, and I'm going to start putting in some second crops. And I have a bucket of compost, which I'm going to add. I've made some trenches, and I'll add a few handfuls of compost into the trench before I plant my seeds. And I'll be planting for a fall crop of kale and probably some lettuces later on. You can also plant beets, and these will be ready in the fall. Today I'm going to plant some kale, and this, if we're lucky and it germinates well and gives me a fall crop, it may also live through the winter to give me a spring crop too. Kale is pretty hardy. And I just want to thinly sprinkle the seeds. And then I'll just cover them up ever so lightly. And then the important thing about fall seeding, or seeding for fall crops, is that you need to keep this area moist. That's why I have a hose out here, so I can come out and sprinkle it and make sure that that seed bed stays moist. The compost also helps. It tends to retain some of the moisture. Beans are in blossom. That can only mean one thing. Picking beans is sure to be coming right along. The strawberries are finished. I did the last picking earlier this week. They lasted pretty much through the month of June. I've taken the covers, the netting off the strawberries at this point, and now the strawberries will get a little sprinkle of organic fertilizer, and then they will start to make runners. And I will try to arrange the runners in one direction so that we can kind of move the strawberries across the garden, probably this way this year, and then I'll take out some of them on the other side. I try to keep the bed about 4 feet wide. On its own, it would spread forever, but there's a limit to how far I can reach in to pick, so 4 feet seems to work. 2 feet in on each side. Seems to work well for a row. Time to do some work on tomatoes too. And again, it's time to do some fastening of the vines to the stakes if you stake the tomatoes, and I like to do that. I'm going to put a figure 8 around the stem and fasten it to the stake. I think I need a longer one. What I'm using are pieces of nylon stocking, except nobody wears them anymore, so nobody has them. But if you can find them, they make a wonderful tie for tomatoes. And just figure 8 them around the stake. I'm going to bring this back in. Try to keep as much as I can in the middle. And then I'll just loosely tie them up. Some people do a lot of pruning on their tomatoes. I usually don't, but you can start taking out pieces that grow between canes. It will put out a leaf between a leaf and a stem, and those are the things that you tend to take out, and again, that will help give it room to flower. All of these will be tied to the stake in 1 or 2 places. I have 2 stakes in most of these rings to hold them up so that a strong wind won't knock them over. I'm also going to fertilize the tomatoes. For this, I'll use a fish fertilizer. And 1 tablespoon per gallon. And I like to water with this. And with the plastic sheeting, it's very hard to get the dry fertilizer around something like a tomato, but the liquid fertilizer works really well. And we'll just let it drain well. You can also use the same fertilizer on eggplant and peppers as we go along here. Water another one. And give a little to some of the eggplant too. About once every 2 weeks is a good cycle to have. This is celery, and it too needs a lot of water, and we'll add a little fertilizer this time. Hopefully our rains will continue and things will continue to benefit from the rain. Otherwise, I'll be out with my watering can on the allowed days for watering in Norfolk, which are the same days as odd or even as your house number. So I have an odd house number, so I will water on odd days of the month. I've also put strings up on my cucumber trellis. My cucumbers did not germinate as well on the far sides of the trellis. I did plant some others. We'll see if they happen to germinate, but even what I have here will be plenty for us, as we're not real fond of cucumbers. So this should be enough cucumbers to last the season. Some of the herbs are up and ready to use. I have young cilantro here, and I have squash that I've put my aluminum foil around, and I'll continue spritzing that with an organic insecticide to hopefully keep the squash borers at bay. They can ruin a squash crop very quickly. They get into the root area and then the vine just dies and you get no squash. I have yellow squash and zucchini in this area. Now let's go back to the shade garden. Always a nice thing to do on a hot day. I have 2 hydrangeas in this area. This is leading back to the shade garden. The first is a ball-shaped hydrangea with multiple blooms in the ball. And this is a more native oak leaf hydrangea, which I really like. And I've noticed one big difference. If you are interested in increasing pollinators to your yard, this is a pollinator magnet. I seldom see any bees on the more cultivated type. This one is a native plant, and it is just covered with all types of flies, bees, honeybees, bumblebees, all kinds of pollinators. So when you're choosing plants, if you're looking to increase the pollinators in your yard, make sure that you select carefully. I see honeybees on it right now. There are 4 or 5 different honeybees. And honeybees have been in really short supply in many areas. So planting some things that not only look nice, which I think this does, but it's very attractive to the bees. And we'd like to keep the bees around. I believe it's 90% of what we eat is directly related to pollination by bees. So we need to have them, not just honeybees. There are many different bees that will pollinate, but having some of the plants available really helps if you have a garden and if you have fruit. All of the raspberries and strawberries were pollinated by bees and other pollinators, so you need those too. Let's move back into the shade a little bit. When the temperature's in the 90s, it's a lot nicer to work in the shade. So I've been doing some more extensive work in the shade garden. Ground covers are really nice, and I have a lot of them, maybe too much. Actually, in this case, it was too much. We have a little waterway here. It actually is a dry stream, but it does fill when we have snow, and it melts down in the driveway. This area takes care of the water and keeps it from coming down the sidewalk towards my back door. It had been overgrown with the pachysandra, so I've been busy digging and cutting back the pachysandra that had overgrown into the rocks. You like a ground cover that's going to, cover the ground, but you have to keep them under control as well. The same is true of shrubs. The rhododendron had also started to come way out over the flower bed, so I also pruned that back. It's really not the season to prune. It's a little late for the rhododendron and a little early for a lot of other things, which would be pruned after they go dormant. But you can prune anytime something gets in your way or if it's diseased or dead. So some limited pruning, it's nice to do it at the proper season, but if that's not when you have the time or the need, go ahead and prune and it will probably be just fine. Moving on down, we'll move down here a little bit. Another area that I've cut back down here is this leucothwae, and leucothwae is a very nice plant for shade. It stays evergreen all winter, but it too travels. And this started out as a tiny plant and it's gotten progressively large. Now I like that it fills the area, but it was also coming over the garden. And I have some hosta in here and room for some other things. And it was starting to just overpower it and go right over onto my path. So that also got a good cut back, and probably will get a little more as the season goes on. I think this is something that you can cut back at any time. I know I do cut it and use it at Christmas time. It is a nice filler with greens. It's different, but and it is evergreen, so we can use it all year. But it did need cutting back, so that's what we did. And then mulched underneath. Now I can add a few annuals in this area. later on. I've already added some impatiens on the other side. Perhaps I'll put impatiens over here as well, just to end out the season. I've taken all the bloom stalks off the hellebores and the epimediums that are in here, just to make it look a little nicer. I have plenty of epimedium that have come up, and I didn't need it to go to seed. Some of them already had, so I probably have even more hellebore to be dug and moved around. The hostas in here, again, get a good spray with deer spray periodically, as the deer are very active in this area. And also the smaller ones, like this one, tend to be very attractive to slugs, which, if you've ever been on the West Coast, snails are also in the same family and can devastate any type of low-growing plant. So we use some of the slug pellets, which are an iron oxide formula, on those. Just basically cleaning up around the garden is something that can be done now, and that'll save you a little time in the fall when you go to do a final cleanup. Now I'm just going to go back to the pond. We still don't have fish. Added a few new water plants over on the far side of the pond. These plants are not hardy, so they'll need to be brought in the winter if I decide to keep them, or dug. In the case of the canna, you can dig that and save it over and replant it in the spring. Still no fish, but we do have frogs. I see one right now at the bottom of the pond. A little one, a little leopard frog. I've seen 3 different kinds of frogs in the pond. It's kind of fun to watch them. They tend to pop out of nowhere. You'll think there's nothing there, and all of a sudden a frog jumps out. So at least we have some wildlife in the pond. I've moved some of my house plants out to the semi-shade, and I've filled a planter, and I have to keep those watered. And also, with impatiens and coleus, the slugs can enter the planters, so you need to use the slug pellets around them in order to keep the foliage from having huge holes. It's also time to just take time to sit and relax and enjoy your garden. If you've got a garden and a place to sit, and most gardens do have a few chairs, make sure you use them occasionally. It's something we all tend to forget. We get so busy working, cutting back ground covers, cutting back shrubs, that we don't take the time just to sit and enjoy our gardens for what they are. So it's important to take a little time, maybe come out with a book, or just sit and enjoy the sights and the sounds. You'll be amazed at how many birds, butterflies, bees, chipmunks, all kinds of things that you'll see if you just take a few minutes to be quiet and wait and see what comes to you. It really is amazing, and it's good for the soul just to sit for a little bit instead of always being busy. Now let's go inside and do a little cooking and see what we can do with some of the things we've picked from the garden. Today we're going to start with dessert. That's always a good place to start. And I'm going to bake some orange and almond cookies. I made them last week and they were really good, and I took them to a get-together for the 4th of July and they disappeared quickly, so I thought I should make some more. And I'm going to give you the ingredients for a full recipe, but I'm actually making half a recipe because I already made a half so that we can continue the process as we go. I'm going to start by putting my dry ingredients together, and that would be a ½ cup of almonds, finely ground almonds, toasted. And as a shortcut, I used almond flour, which is available in most grocery stores. And to toast it, I just put it into a nonstick frying pan on a low heat and stirred it until it got a little bit brown. And that's all you need to do to toast it. To that, I'll add 2 cups of flour and a ½ teaspoon baking powder and a ½ teaspoon salt. And I'm going to mix that around. And those will be our dry ingredients. I have a ½ cup butter in my mixing bowl, and to that I will add, actually I have a cup of butter in the mixing bowl, and we'll add 3/4 of a cup of sugar. A little less than 3/4 is all right. And then I'll mix that until it comes together. bowl at least once here. To that, I'm going to add 1 egg yolk, and do not throw away the white because you're going to need it later. So the yolk goes in here, but you do use the white, so you're not wasting it. We'll be using it a little later. And then I'll add the rind, the grated rind of 1 orange, and that's the orange flavor in the cookies. And I grate it onto wax paper. And just put it in. And we also want to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And I'll just put that away. Then add the dry ingredients. Group these things. And mix it until it all comes together. Probably will need at least 1 scrape down. Makes a fairly soft dough. Get it all off the beater. This one I'll put in the sink. I'll move that out of the way and continue mixing it, and you can see that it's all come together nicely. And I'm going to turn this out onto the counter. It's about the consistency of Play-Doh. Pretty easy to work with. And I'm going to form it into a roll that's 1.5 to 2 inches wide. I'll make sure it's doesn't have any holes in it. I'm going to wrap this in plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator for at least an hour or overnight or however long you want to put it in. We'll keep it in the refrigerator. And now, because I did make that other half earlier, I have one that's already been refrigerated, and you can see it's pretty hard because of the amount of butter that's in the dough. I have a bowl of almonds. And the egg white is going to go into another bowl. That egg white we saved. And I'm going to cut this in 1/4-inch slices. And I'll take each one and dip it into the egg white and then into the almonds and put it on the baking sheet. To cover the tops. The egg white is what holds the almonds on top of the cookie as it bakes. You can push them down. Make sure the top of each cookie is covered with the almonds. May take a little longer to get them ready, but you don't have to frost them, so that saves time. When they're done, they're done. The whole recipe makes about 40 cookies, or a little over 3 dozen. Then these are going to go into a 350 oven for about 10-15 minutes. And you can do 2 sheets at a time if you wish. I'm going to get the rest of these on the baking sheet ready to bake. If you make the full recipe, you will have 2 rolls. We have 2 rolls, the one in the refrigerator and this one. And I recommend you leave the one in the refrigerator until you're finished with the first one, if it's a hot day. It's easier to work with the dough, dipping it if it's cold. There, I have another sheet ready to go in the oven. And then the other roll can be done later. And we'll time these at about 10 minutes. Watch them and see, and just until they get nice and golden brown. Now, if you have leftover almonds, You probably won't have much leftover egg, and that can get discarded. But remember that these almonds have been potentially contaminated with raw egg. So I would suggest if you want to use them, be sure you use them in something that's well cooked, because they have had the raw egg potentially in them. You could add them to stir fry or use them in something else, but just make sure that they're cooked, or add them to another kind of cookies. Just a small food safety item. Now, while the cookies bake, I'm going to make a Chinese dish using some of those peas that I already picked, and a few other things, onions from the garden as well. And what I'm going to make is a mushi chicken, and I have the chicken in the refrigerator that's been cut up. Again, in warm weather, it's important for food safety to keep perishables cold or to heat them. And so I kept the chicken in the refrigerator as long as possible. I'm going to heat 2 tablespoons of oil in my skillet pan and add a clove of garlic. I could also use some of the garlic scapes cut up into tiny pieces. And I did have a garlic clove. And the chicken. Again, when you cut up chicken, make sure not to contaminate other things. When I was preparing for this recipe, I cut up all my vegetables first and then cut up the chicken so as not to contaminate any of the vegetables having the chicken even around at the time. I'm going to put this on high, and I'm going to stir fry that chicken until it's just no longer pink. Our chicken is sizzling away, and it's pretty much lost its pink color. So we can think about adding some other things to our stir-fried dish. And the next things that I'll add will be cabbage, and it calls for either Chinese or regular cabbage shredded. I took the easy way out and used coleslaw mix. 3 cups of coleslaw mix. This was 1 large chicken breast and 1 clove of garlic. But I'll just use the coleslaw mix, and that takes care of all that chopping. But I have chopped up carrots. And we'll put those in and let it cook a little bit. And I have some water chestnuts, which are in the refrigerator. These were canned. They need to be drained. And we'll add those. They add a little crunch to the mixture. Let's see. Stack some of these up. And I'm going to add also 1/2 cup of chopped green onion. I'm going to let that stir a little bit until the carrots start to cook. How long you cook this mixture kind of depends on how crisp you like your carrots. If you like them crisp, it doesn't take too long. If you like them a little more cooked, perhaps a little longer. You can also cut them in matchstick pieces. I found rounds were easier today. If you really like your carrots done, you can add a lid at this point, and then they'll steam a little bit as well. And I'll add some of the Chinese pea pods. If these were frozen, I would have added them just from the thawed from the package. But these were fresh ones, so I did microwave them for just a minute. while this continues to cook a bit, I'll make a sauce for them. I'm going to use 1/3 of a cup of soy sauce, just soy sauce from the bottle, and 2 tablespoons of sherry. This is a dry sherry. Half teaspoon of ground ginger. You could also use chopped ginger root. And we want about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I'll just give it a few shakes. Peppermill. And 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. It will mix in well because the mixture is cold. We want to make sure we do mix it well. Thoroughly dissolve that cornstarch, which will add as just a light thickening. And I'll add that to our vegetable mixture and chicken. And we'll stir that around and cook it until it thickens slightly, and we're finished. Mushu chicken is traditionally served with pancakes, and I did make the pancakes that were also included with this recipe. They had some scallions chopped into the mixture. That's the spots that you see on them. But I decided that it was too much work to make them again, so I probably will never do it again. They just took time to roll really thin. I think you could do just as well with tortillas. Flour tortillas would work just fine. And the way the dish is usually served would be to put several of the pancakes on the plate. Fill them with the mushu chicken and fold it around them. So you can see tortillas should work pretty well as well in the recipe. And then you just fold the pancake around the mixture. Or you could make stacks as well. I'm not doing too much good folding here. There we are. Some spills out invariably. So let's see if we can keep it folded. So we have our mushu chicken, the pancakes that go with it. And for dessert, we have the almond cookies. Come out of the oven now, and we have the almond cookies. And also, since you took all the skin off of that orange, you might as well slice the orange and use it instead of having it just go bad in the refrigerator. So we will serve the orange with a few raspberries and a mint sprig from the garden. And along with my leftover 4th of July flowers, there's our meal for today, using from the garden our snow peas, scallions, raspberries. Thank you for joining me today for a walk in the garden and a trip through the kitchen too. And I'll see you another time real soon when we'll do it all over again on NCTV, Norfolk Community Cable Television.